Right there we have a little coot taking off for flight. And just below that, this is the American alligator. Born and bred in the swamp.
At the start of this year, I told y'all about my new interest in birds.
We're going to try to photograph and identify as many bird species as we possibly can. This is the year we're going to have a big
I've grown up my whole life around animals with a huge passion for everything that lives and breathes, or even is best known as creepy crawly.
Distinguished coral snake from scarlet king snake. Okay, I'm going to leave them be. That's all I can do for them.
When I was a child, I remember my father finding a yellow rat snake in our birdhouse. The abundance of birds that every one of us has the opportunity to see in almost every situation or environment has amazed me even more than the things that people don't necessarily appreciate. Whether you live in a metropolis or some of the most desolate regions on Earth, like deserts or the Arctic, birds have found a way to survive in all of these different situations.
The osprey's building a nest on the tower right now.
They've carved a niche in just about every environment I can think of. While birds hardly get the recognition they truly deserve, they serve many important functions. Birds' roots run from the time of dinosaurs. They co-evolved with many of the plant species we find here today. And in fact, without so many of these beautiful and unique species, the biodiversity that makes our Earth so unique and so special would only be a fraction of what it is today if it wasn't for birds. When plants first started developing flowers, they utilized insects for pollination. Since then, they found an even more efficient pollinator in birds. I couldn't possibly go into every little detail that makes birds so important. Many of these birds were right alongside me as I filmed some of my most recent exciting episodes. I will share with you my journey to find a bird that is so very special to me. A bird that evaded me
I just left the ranger station and
on so many of my trips and places I've heard this bird existed. Places this bird should exist, yet every time the bird just evaded my camera. Patience pays off, and at a time when I least expected, in a place I least expected it, this bird made a grand appearance. Right when I least expected it. But first, I'd like to share with you what sparked my interest in birds. Just before the start of the year, I was driving past a retention pond and I noticed a bright pink colored bird, and I realized I had never seen one. I thought it may have been a flamingo, but upon further research I realized that it was actually a rosy-headed spoonbill.
right here in this very pond was the spot that I first spotted the rosy-headed spoonbill, my spark bird. And while I don't see a rosy-headed spoonbill here today, I do see a lot of birds and an abundance of different animal species that have all benefited from this man-made retention pond.
I continued to read on and found out that these birds are not that common, and in fact to this day I've only seen one that I can remember. That moment right there. Oh, you're okay. I usually don't use the audio anyways. This bird was what most birders call their spark bird. A lot of bird enthusiasts or birders have a bird like that rosy-headed spoonbill. They call it their spark bird. A bird that sparked and fueled an obsession for love of all birds. I still have a lot to explain, so I'm going to go at a faster pace. I kept thinking about that rosy-headed spoonbill. I wish I had a picture to share. So that moment right there, I started taking pictures of every bird I could. But the quality of my camera phone looked like this. Basically shit. I bought a lens for my phone. It gave me some range but no clarity. I began researching cameras. I knew that if I wanted to feature birds on my YouTube channel, I needed to be able to get close, but not literally. I needed a camera with a lens. After the bills are paid and the trees are planted, I have this much money to buy a camera with. So I stopped eating. Not really. I cut back everywhere else I could and saved enough money to buy a camera. I asked some of my YouTube friends, which is really only a few people, what they use, which gives me an opportunity to give a big shout out to Michael Dye. He's a great photographer and does some excellent YouTube videos. You can find his channel in my description. I'll be honest, his backup camera is nicer than my main camera. I saved up enough money to buy a gently used camera from a pawn shop. This was my only realistic option. Oh, and I got this 300mm lens on sale, and I also talked those guys out of a camera bag and a strap. I was thrilled to be able to finally purchase a nice camera. I got a Canon Rebel EOS 6. Now I was in business. My birding passion had some hope. It was only a matter of getting out and finding my target species. Okay, I'll tell you, my target bird was an American icon. This bird's population dwindled down to just over 400 nesting pairs. If you follow my channel, you already know what it is. It's a big predator that faced extinction, and by the feathers on its chinny chin chin, beat it. If you don't already know what it is, I'll tell you. It's the bald eagle. We got a camera now. I was off to capture epic photos of animals that I was just only previously able to admire from a distance. To Prains Prairie it was. We had a list of target species. First was the bald eagle, then sandhill cranes,
Great Florida birding trail.
and the American bison, as well as cracker horses. We found 3 out of 4 of our target species, as well as all these other, like the pileated woodpecker, white-tailed deer, and many amphibians. I spent 2 days exploring the prairie. While we found a lot of interesting things, the bald eagle didn't make an appearance. So I headed to Noonan's Lake, where one person informed me there were many in that area. I mean, all animals rely on water, so this seemed like the excellent habitat to spot such an amazing apex predator. I did capture many birds there, but no bald eagle. So I headed to Sweetwater Branch, the northernmost portion of the prairie. I mean, a gold mine for birding. I saw cranes, coots, red-winged blackbirds, and a blue-gray gnatcatcher, and a very large American alligator, but not the most iconic bird I've been seeking for. I headed to the coast, Crystal River to be specific.
So we have to go, y'all.
It was still cold, and the manatees were all huddled up in the warmer springs. There were 203 sister springs on that day. However, I saw little birds there. I decided to leave the fresh water of the springs and scout the coast. I saw a plethora of birds, cranes, pelicans, white ibis, which are not only white. Then I saw a large raptor in a nest, commonly known as a seahawk, an osprey. It was a privilege seeing a large raptor, however, it wasn't my first encounter with that bird. The coast of Crystal River was another birding gold mine, yet no most iconic bald eagle. The following weekend I made another journey to Silver Springs and decided to see what bird species I could photograph, as well as my target species, the rhesus macaque, that most people consider a nuisance. Yet, they hold a spot in my heart that's near and dear to me. I mean, to be subjected to travel from the other side of the world and dropped off in a foreign land where nothing is familiar to them, and not only to survive, but to thrive, that has to mean something, right? We also captured many lifer birds. A lifer bird is a bird that you capture for the first time in your life. I saw a wood duck and a green heron, 2 beautiful aquatic birds.
It blew my mind. It's awesome to see what preservation efforts can do for an environment, even though non-native macaques are here. Actually seeing all the animals that have come back, even with the introduction of an animal like the macaque, is truly amazing. These are all ibises, white ibises. It's like a whole flock of them.
I'm dying to finally capture a photo of a bald eagle since I got my new camera. While it wouldn't be my first encounter with a bald eagle, in fact, my 4th encounter, I have never been able to capture a good quality photo of America's most iconic raptor. This was my only video of the bald eagle till, at a time when I least expected, this mega raptor, America's most iconic bird, made a grand appearance. I was driving home from a long day at work when a large bird swooped over the hood of my truck. It's weird, since I started birding or watching birds or saw my spark bird, I look at every bird I see, a little movement in the sky, and I gotta look at it. Well, I looked at this large bird and I saw the white head on it, and I knew right away a bird with a wingspan up to 8 feet long. A bird of this size could only be one bird, the America's most iconic bird, the bald eagle. And while I was driving, of course, I didn't have time to pull my camera out and take a picture of it flying, so I followed it. My instincts had been right all along. This large raptor flew in front of my truck, crossed the highway, and landed right next to a small pond and perched on a light pole. These birds travel around big bodies of water and little bodies. I began snapping pictures, one after another, trying to approach it closer and ever closer, trying to get the best shot I could, all the while from a distance not to disturb this bird. Well, apparently, knowing that bald eagles and most birds of prey can read pages of a book from like a mile away, it didn't like me being that close. It flew off, and I captured these motion shots. As I left that pond, the joy and excitement of spotting America's most iconic raptor, I couldn't contain it. I was thrilled. As I left the small area where that pond was, I saw it again, perched upon a power line pole. Like I said before, you can spot these birds of prey, and birds in general, in all environments. I snapped, it must have been 100 photographs of this bird. People must have thought I was crazy. They probably didn't know what I was even looking at. Most people are too oblivious and go about their days in a fast-paced life.
I'm Alex, the Florida wildlife guy. Even though that's Deer Haven Power Plant, and that is a bald eagle, birds are still surviving in this vicinity. It's amazing to see the resilience of species, even in an area that is so affected by humans and human progression. Let me get up here and get this shot.
The patience truly paid off. In fact, the omen for a bald eagle is patience pays off. And it just goes to prove the omen is true. As long and as many trips and as much effort as I put in to find this most iconic bird of prey, it was gone just like that. What seemed like a snap of a finger. And it's a memory I'll never forget.
One of the keys with birding is that if you don't see it, just wait, they'll come. They're usually just right there, you just don't see them.
Do you win stuff for moths?
Yeah. Bird of the day, you go in for moths if you have no other birds.